Okay guys, sorry about the abrupt end on the first video. In this video, we're going to make what we're calling the center square. Okay, so this one right here. I also forgot to mention in the introductory video that this piece N, you have this in there, we fussy cut this for you. Fussy cutting is just when you make sure that you get a whole design or you get your design centered or whatever. So we did that for you. So this is piece N. The other pieces you need to make this block are L and M, and you need your squared rulers, part A and part B, okay? You guys have all made this block before, so it shouldn't be, the construction method shouldn't be confusing to you, but I am gonna show you just so that you can see the trim up process especially. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is take our L's and our M's, and we're gonna cut these in half on the diagonal, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay our ruler from corner to corner, and we're gonna cut these in half so we have triangles. And I'm gonna find my rotary cutter. So we're just gonna do that with all of these, the background, and we're going to do that to our turquoise print blocks, corner to corner, cut it into two triangles, and the same thing for the last one. And now we're gonna head, after we do this, we're gonna head over to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew the peach background blocks on first. And remember, when you're using squared, we're gonna sew the two opposite sides, and then we're gonna press, and then we're gonna sew these two sides. And then we're just gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna sew two opposite sides with the turquoise and press, and sew two opposite sides with the turquoise. But between sewing this round and sewing this round, we're gonna show you how to trim those up, okay? So we're gonna head over to the sewing machine and get the peach one sewn on, and then we'll show you how to trim. Okay, so here we are at the sewing machine, and we're gonna sew these triangles on. I prefer to sew with a triangle on the bottom so that I can see what I'm doing is lining up my raw edges here. And you'll see I've got the dog ears, these little dog ears hanging over the sides. They're approximately equal, and that's what you want, okay? You don't want to have anything grossly uneven. You just need them to be, but you don't have to measure, you don't have to, they just need to be, so they look like they're approximately the same amount of dog ear hanging off both sides, okay? So now I'm gonna stitch at a 1/4 inch, scant quarter, 1.8 stitch length. I've got my iris colored thread in there, and I'm just gonna sew at a 1/4 inch, and I'm being extremely careful about keeping my raw edges together and not having a large seam allowance. I want this to be really even and equal. This is worth taking your time on. This is this block, it can be a challenge, and what we're gonna do later is even more challenging. So now we're gonna do the same thing on the opposite side. We sewed on this side, so now we're gonna sew on this side, okay? And again, approximately equal dog ears, and my raw edges really lined up straight, and then I'm gonna sew slowly. Make sure my raw edges here are slipping. There we go. I'm going to sew slowly at a nice scant quarter. Slip in here, so I'm going to fix it, realign. Okay, and now we're going to press. And I'm gonna press open, and then I'm gonna press towards my triangles. When we're using squared, we always press out towards the triangles, away from the center of the block, okay? But first I'm gonna make sure I don't have any bumps or lumps. And then I'm going to press out, and if you have a folding pen, this is a great place to use it. I'm back at the shop this month, and ours is still missing. So that's okay. I should have brought mine from home. I didn't even think about it. That's okay. Okay, so once we have those pressed really, really well, nice and flat towards the triangles, we're going to go back to the sewing machine, and we're just going to repeat what we just did with the last two triangles. So I'm going to get this lined up and then I'll show you. Raw edges perfectly together and approximately equal dog ears. Did you get that? Yeah? Okay. Okay. There we go. Whoop. Hold on, guys. My machine is trying to unthread itself. Nobody needs that kind of help. Okay. Raw edges perfectly together. Nice scant 1/4 inch seam. Okay. And then same thing on the other side. Equal dog ears, raw edges together. If you're not tired of me saying it yet, you will be by the end of this block. Okay, back to the iron we go. And see how nice and centered that design is? It's called a mandala, I believe, but it looks really nice. And that's the fun part of fussy cutting. It means you get the whole design in there right where you want it. Okay, and now press out. We've got a nice flat back here. And then now we're going to go back to the cutting table where we are going to trim it up. Okay, so I'm trying to get this so it's not have a glare here. What we're going to use, this is the square squared part A ruler, okay? And the lines we're going to use are these lines. Center square for 8-inch finished blocks. Finished means sewn into your quilt, okay? So when this square is when we're done completing this square, it's going to be 8.5. But when we sew it into our big block here, it's 8, all right? So we are going to use the lines, these outer lines, and we're going to use these registration marks, okay? So here's what we're going to do. We've got our square here, and this, remember, it's like the Tucker trimmer. We want to have some square hanging over here and some square hanging over our 8-inch lines here, okay? So I've got all of that, so now I'm going to use these registration marks that are on here. So I've got my one lined up exactly at the point here, another one exactly at the point here, this one, the third one here, and the fourth one here. My fourth one is just a little off, so I'm going to scoot it up there, and I'm going to check everybody again. So right in the corner, there, and there. Okay. Invisigrip, if you don't have it, makes these a little bit less wobbly. Lots of pressure all the way on all of my fingers here. I have nice big hands. This is an advantage. Okay, I didn't turn the ruler. I just turned the block. And now I'm going to line up the cut edge that I just trimmed here and the bottom one here. And I'm going to recheck my registration marks that they're all in the corners. And this guy is really determined to be a little bit off, which is telling me that when I go to sew this block together, this corner is going to be a pain. Okay, pressure on all parts of the block, and trim and trim. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the sewing machine. We're going to sew those triangles on, press them out. Sew these triangles on, press them out. Okay? Okay, same process as before. We're just making sure our dog ears are even and my raw edges are lined up. But now I've got one more thing to think about. This, I don't know if you can see it, this little X right here where my threads cross, this is also a target for me. I want to sew right through that or just one thread into the seam allowance, okay? So, fussy block, worth the effort because it's stunning. You get a stunning result. But take the time to fuss at it. Making a sample block isn't a bad idea ever. You always get extra prize bucket entries if you make sample blocks and send them to me. Okay, here we go. I did it. I went right through the center there, exactly where my target was. Always makes me feel like my sewing machine is giving me a pat on the back when I do that. Okay, I'm going to check. That's perfect. That's as good as a result as you can expect. And the secret to that is just slow and steady fussing, making sure everything is lining up at every step along the way. Because I actually made samples last night and I was just double checking my measurements and wanted to make sure everything measured properly, so I was in a hurry and I wasn't paying much attention, and boy oh boy, you guys, my block, all the points were off and everything else. But again, it was just, I was checking my, woohoo, I went right through my point again. But I was just double checking my math and making sure my cutting directions were correct. So I wasn't too worried about the sizing issue. Okay, we're gonna double check that. My point is good there too. So now I'm gonna press. And again, I'm gonna end up pressing towards the triangles. Press away. Steam is your friend. Okay, and now we're going to add our last two triangles. Make sure my dog ears are. Just slide this way a little. Okay. As this gets bigger, this gets a little bit tougher to maneuver. Okay. That's what happens when you press the cut button instead of the lower your presser foot button. Okay, I hit my target there. And now I'm making sure my raw edges are lined up perfectly for the rest of my seam. Check my point. Off camera, I'm going to release that point a little bit. That's a little bit cut off, and that just means I dipped in on my seam. I'm on this side of my seam instead of the other side. So I'll fix that before we trim. And to fix that, I'm just going to release the seam on either side of the point and re-sew it. I'm not going to take out my whole seam allowance. I'm just going to do probably about an inch, ½ inch on either side of the point I want to fix. Okay. What is happening? Okay, so that point is great. This one I'm going to fix, and I'm going to press the same way I've been pressing everything else, and then I'll meet you back at the cutting table to trim it up. Okay, we've got square squared part B. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use these lines, 8.5 here. That's for the edges of your square, and then these X's that are 8s. Okay, we're going to use those as well. Okay, so here's how we're going to line this up. I always eyeball it with, I start with the X's, and so I've got my X in my corner here, and my X in my corner here, here and here, okay? And it's not unusual, it's not perfect, so we want to split the difference if you can't get something to line up. So I can get 3 of them, but not 4 of them. So what I'm doing here is, I'll line it up and then I'll point it out to you. So this guy is almost perfect. This guy is off a little bit here. So I'm going to try to, there we go. You just kind of push and fuss and tilt, and this is pretty good. So this one's just a little bit off, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it. That's good, that's good, that's good, that's good. I've got extra fabric hanging over my lines here, and I've got extra fabric hanging over the edge of the ruler. So again, pressure on everything, all parts of my hand here. Okay, trim, and then spin your block and redo the whole thing. Again, start with your X's and get those lined up first. And I've got those lined up, right there. Okay, and then look, my line here is perfect and my line here is perfect. So there's that. Okay, and now we have our 8.5 inch unfinished, 8-inch finished, center square. Okay, so that's going to be in the middle, and all of these guys are going to be turned. So one here, one here, one here, one here. Okay, and so get that block made, and then we will have one final video about your middle units. Okay, the middle blocks. So we'll see you in that video when you're done.